Hey, Yarelly, and welcome to Voice Notes from the Organized Homeschool. I'm so excited to chat with you and get to learn more about you, your children, your homeschool, all the things. So let's just jump right in. Let's start with you sharing a bit more about yourself. You can share whatever you feel comfortable sharing, maybe a little bit about your background, maybe more about your homeschool, your children's ages, your style, anything you feel comfortable sharing, and then we'll go from there.
Hi, Erica. I'm excited to talk with you too. I'm a homeschooling mom of two, one of whom is autistic, and I've been teaching my kids since they were toddlers, but our official homeschool journey began in 2019. I'm going to be sharing our journey online to help encourage and support other moms, especially those who are looking for a more flexible, heart-centered approach to learning. Our homeschool style is eclectic and secular. I'm also a wife and a psychology student. I'm multi-passionate about motherhood, self-care, psychology, healing, reading, crafting, and romanticizing life. I'm excited to chat about what it really looks like behind the scenes and to hopefully make some other moms feel a little less alone and feel encouraged that they can balance homeschooling and anything else too.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'm excited to dig into so many of the things you just mentioned in your quick intro. First, though, I would love to know, I know you said you started homeschooling officially in 2019. How old were your kids when you started homeschooling, and why did you decide to homeschool? What was your reason why, and is that still your reason why? Is there a different reason you have now, or maybe it's shifted a little bit? But I would love to start with your why.
Yes, that's correct. We officially began our homeschool journey in 2019. At the time, my son was 6 and my daughter was 3. My husband and I were working opposite schedules, and I was also taking online classes. It was about a year before our son was set to start kindergarten that we made the decision to homeschool rather than send him to public school. At that time, homeschooling wasn't as common as it is now, especially not within our social circle. We were the first in both of our families to choose this path, so I wasn't initially met with much support, but eventually they came around, and now everyone respects our decision. To be honest, I was the one who initially planted the seed, and thankfully my husband was open and supportive, and he trusted my intuition. I just couldn't shake the feeling that sending our son off to school just didn't feel right for us. So I started researching both the history of public education and what homeschooling could offer. I also want to mention that I had previously worked at an elementary school, which gave me some behind the scenes insight and definitely informed my perspective. To be transparent, I'm not anti public schools, and although I absolutely love homeschooling and I believe it's what's best for my children, I do believe public schools should always exist. Anyway, around that time, school shootings were becoming more frequent, and the idea of sending my children to a physical school just started to feel unsafe. But to be clear, that wasn't the reason that we chose to homeschool. I just could feel it just deep down in my heart. I just knew that we were meant to homeschool. Our why was rooted in wanting our children to receive an individualized education, one that honors how they learn best. I wanted them to have the time and flexibility to explore different learning methods, to move on if they master something quickly, or to slow down and try new approaches if something didn't click right away. I wanted to support their interests as they grow and help them discover their passions and give them the freedom to truly love learning, all while knowing that they are safe and supported at home. That's still our why today, but it was deeply affirmed after our son received his autism diagnosis. He's considered low support needs, and we were able to get him into therapies that helped him work on these specific areas that he needed help in. He's thriving now, and I truly believe that being able to homeschool has made a huge difference for both of our kids.
Okay, yes, love your why and can definitely relate to a lot of what you shared, especially the individualized portion of it. I totally agree. And I think when you have worked in a school before, you see how it's really difficult. The system is just not set up to support that individualization and I think a lot of the focus in education is give them individualized support around their needs, areas for growth academically, and we don't even consider things that you mentioned, their interests and what they want to learn about. And so it's really cool as a homeschooler to be able to give those things to your child. when my son is really into rockets and space, we learn a lot about that. When he's really into cats randomly, let's talk about cats and mammals and like all the things. So yeah, I love that so, so much. You mentioned that in your first year, or like when you first got started, you didn't have much support from your family. Can you share more about that? Like, what was that like? How did you get through that experience? And now you said that folks are more on board. So like, can you take us through that journey, take me through that journey a little bit, and share just more about how you got through that? Because I definitely know that even though homeschooling is becoming more mainstream, I guess is the word, there's still millions of more children in traditional school. And the majority of like when I think about my friend group prior to homeschooling, no one homeschooled. I am the first in all my friends, I am the first in my family, and the same for my husband. And so when you look around, we're still very outnumbered. And so I know there's probably a lot of people who are met with a similar situation to what you may have experienced of not having much support. So I'd love if you would be willing to share, what that was like, how you got through that, maybe even any advice for folks who might be experiencing the same thing, how you said, despite the lack of support, we're still homeschooling and did it and moved forward.
Yes, exactly. And it's definitely the way it's structured. Like, for example, if teachers were able to have a smaller class size, I'm sure it would be more manageable for them to give each student a more individualized education and give also the kids that need a little extra support that help that they need. And oh my gosh, yes, exactly. I love that you're supporting your son by exploring his interest. I'm glad that you shared that. We actually had something similar. One year, my son was having a little bit of a hard time staying interested in some of his schoolwork. And so I switched it up and got all Minecraft workbooks. That was like what he loved at the time. I mean, he still loves it. But anyways, so I got him some Minecraft workbooks for each subject. And that turned it around for him that year. And that one switch made learning fun for him again. So it was really cool. And of course, so when we first brought up the idea of homeschooling, I was met with a lot of questions and criticism. I say I because since I was going to be the one homeschooling, I was the one who got the questions. I think oftentimes when you make a choice that is different than most people, it's met with resistance because it's unknown. And a lot of people fear the unknown. That, and I think some just get offended when you make a choice different than they did. But that's the thing. Just because I might do something different, it doesn't mean that I think how you're doing it is bad. This is just what I'm choosing or what's working for me and my family. Anyway, a couple arguments happened because they just didn't get it, and I can only hope that everyone just wants the best for my kids, and they were just trying to push for what they thought was best. But ultimately, my husband and I are the ones who get to make those choices for what we think is best for our family. It felt a little lonely at first, of course, because no one we knew was homeschooling, but now I've had a few people reach out to me and ask me about homeschooling and how they or someone they know can get started, and I feel so honored and happy when that happens. How was your journey being the first to homeschool in your social group?
Yeah, so I honestly didn't get any outwardly negative reactions to our choice to homeschool. I am a former teacher and a former principal, so I think a lot of people were like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Because, you've taught children before, so why not teach your own children? I honestly think that was probably a part of the reason why the reactions were either positive or just kind of neutral, like, yep, that makes sense. I think that's a huge reason. I think the other reason is probably because I don't know if I really talked to anyone who I would think would give me a negative reaction because I don't really want that or care for that. So, everyone has been very supportive of the decision, but I'm glad that you and your husband were able to, make the decision. And now that they're seeing the positive in what you're doing, they are now coming to you for support. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's switch gears just a little bit. Tell me about how you're juggling all the things with homeschooling, because you have two young children, you are a student, and then you have your hobbies and things, and a wife, of course, and then all the other roles that you play. So talk to me about all the things that you have going on and then how you juggle that with homeschooling.
That's good. I'm glad you received a positive reaction. So, when I first decided to go back to school, I was pregnant with my daughter. My son was a toddler, and my husband and I were working opposite shifts. And when I say opposite, like I mean completely opposite. Like I worked 5 a.m. to 1:45, and he clocked in at 2 p.m. So it was hard. I took a couple breaks from school during that time, and just this past May, I finally graduated with my associate's degree. Now I'm pursuing a bachelor's degree in psychology, and now that I'm a stay-at-home mom, the experience was easier in the sense that I had more time. I used to be really strict, like super strict, about schedules and literally everything before. Like, I literally had a hard time relaxing, and I was constantly stressed. But I've since learned to relax and make sure to make time for me as well outside of my titles of wife, mom, homeschool teacher, and student. Thanks to my husband, I learned to ask for help and to delegate things when I need to. That and having a schedule helps so much. Like, for example, I try to have a meal plan for the week and I make a grocery list so when we go grocery shopping, it's so much easier. Sometimes, if I'm really on top of it, I will meal prep on like a Sunday, and that really helps have things done for the week. I also plan what we're doing for our homeschool week, and that helps me remember what we need to do on what day. But I'm not super strict with it either. Like, if we don't finish everything on the list, then I can either add it to the following day or spread it out during the week. Or if the kids need a break, then we'll take it as needed. Basically, I try to have most things planned out and stick to it. But if it doesn't work out as I planned, I just take a breath and let it go. It's not the end of the world. Oh, and I typically like to plan out unit studies for the entire school year during the summer. And then I try to plan out all the details for the unit studies and all the subjects at least like a month ahead in advance. I also plan to do certain things like on this day I'll do laundry and on this day I'll mop, etc. The same goes for my self-care to-do list. I try to keep it simple and stick to it on certain days. Now, if we're talking more of like a day-to-day, I get up, make breakfast, we might do yoga and meditate if we're really on top of our game, and then homeschool, take a break, homeschool, and then lunchtime. I typically do my schoolwork after I finish homeschooling, and then they get screen time while I work on it. I also try to have deadlines for myself, such as completing schoolwork at least 2 days before the due date, so I'm not stressing about it. This is also typically the time that I will get a little reading time or before bed, just depending. Then I start prepping dinner, or sometimes we go to the gym, or the kids have their extracurricular activities, and of course, then our bedtime routine. But yeah, it totally just depends on the week. I try to balance it as best as I can. And unfortunately, I can't be a totally go with the flow person, but at least I've learned to flow and pivot when I need to, and that's really helped. And of course, having such an active and involved partner is such a blessing, and I appreciate him so much.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing all of that. It sounds like you have definitely gotten to a good place. And, I appreciate you sharing that, like, you took a break, right? Because sometimes it's just breaks are necessary, right? And it's okay to take a break. I know from someone who had a really hard time quitting something that I knew I needed to quit. I I know that there's a lot of people, myself included, who at points in life like feel like, oh, if I stop doing this, I'm a failure, right? Like I'm quitting. But it's like, no, sometimes it's just a break. And it's like you do take a break for a year or two or a month or two, and then you get back to it. So I appreciate you sharing that. Can you talk to us a little bit about this like unit study for the whole year and then what the month to month planning looks like? Like I'm such a planner. I love planning. And I know that there's a lot of people who plan and don't plan and feel very strongly about either creating plans or not. And so like what is that planning process like for you for homeschool planning? And you can talk about the unit studies, like you plan them out for the year and then each month you get them ready. What can you give us some more detail about that? And then also just if there's other planning you're doing too to have your lessons together, I would love to hear about that.
Oh, for sure. And honestly, I did fail class and I took it really hard and loved school for years until I decided to go back and finish. But yeah, sometimes we just need a break, and that's okay. But yeah, so for the unit studies, I like to ask my kids like what kind of like things or animals they would like to learn about for the year. So I'll make a list of that, and I'll also review like our books and see if there's anything I'd like to dive into with them and add it to the list. And then lastly, I'll look at our history curriculum to see if there's anything extra that we can do for each chapter. And from there, I'll categorize them into certain months that I think would be the perfect time to learn about. Like, for example, like ones that we've done in the past have been learning about the moon. So in November, the full moon is called the beaver moon. So we learned about beavers, and the kids did a project on it and had to present it. And in October, we learned about pumpkins. And in March, my daughter wanted to learn about the folklore of fairies, and we were also reading about the Renaissance era. So we did some activities, and we took them to the Renaissance fair as well. It's just about making it fun and interactive. So I'll take the info and then I'll look up activities and crafts to do for the time period we're learning about, or animals, etc. And I'll also find videos for them to watch, or if we can go somewhere like a museum or something else that's interactive, we'll go. And then for basics like math and English, I just plan that in my planner as an everyday thing, or I'll spread them out like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we'll do this subject and on this day, and other days we'll do this other subject. So it just depends on the workload and what I think they can handle, because I want to make sure it's balanced. So we're doing the work that we need to do and also having time to do activities.
Okay, this is so good, and I love the like focus on two things that you shared that I wanted to just like repeat back. Is like the focus on being interactive and engaging and fun. Of course, that always makes learning so much better, right? Like especially all children, young children like to learn by doing and engaging and being immersed in things. So that's really cool that you focus there. And then I heard you, it kind of sounds like you use like some themes that pop up in the month. So like based off of the time of year or the seasons and things that happen those months, that's kind of like how you pick some of your topics or units as well. So I think that's really smart too, because it's like this is very timely, just real life stuff that you can learn about. So you mentioned having a home list and a self-care list. I'm curious to know like how you do these things. So like what does that look like managing other parts outside of homeschool that do impact your homeschool, like your self-care, like your home? I would just love to know more about how you're using those things.
I totally agree. They are more involved when it's interactive with them. And thank you. Yeah, it just fits into the schedule best and makes it easier to find activities to do and places to go to in those times, such as like learning about pumpkins or farms when you're able to go to a pumpkin patch and find all the seasonal crafts at the craft store, etc. But yeah, right. So for the home list, I try to stick with the mental note of like doing laundry in the weekend, so it's ready for the week. But I will also do laundry in the middle of the day as well as needed. And I do most things on the weekend, to be honest, but sometimes I will do a chore real quick while the kids are doing schoolwork that's independent work or crafting or playing, etc., that I can step away. And then there are moments in the day where it can be squeezed in if I didn't get a chance to complete it during the weekend. As far as self-care, I will try to do what I call like an everything shower at least once a month. And I'll typically do this on a weekend afternoon, so I can take all the time that I need and not have to worry about like bedtime so much. We're not really strict on bedtimes. I mean, it's not like crazy, but we're not like super strict on bedtime on the weekend. We let them stay up just a little bit longer. So yeah. And then I have other things I like to do as a sort of daily self-care, such as like reading, getting ready. And I don't do this one every day, but I have noticed that I feel better when I do get ready. So it's something I'm working on, because something just as simple as like, you know, like changing my clothes and out of like comfy leggings or whatever, just, I don't know, helps me feel more put together, and like, having some light makeup on, or my hair just done in some sort of way. Like, I don't know, it makes me feel better. So I feel like that way I'm kind of pouring into myself a little bit. And then I also like to spritz my face with rose water in the morning and at night, and putting hair oil on my ends before bed. And another thing I love to do and really helps me is meditating in the morning. It really helps to ground me before everyone is awake, by the way. And it just, I don't know, it helps me feel calm and just ready to handle the day.
Okay, I love this list of things you do for self-care, and a couple reasons why I love it. One is that some of the things that you mentioned are probably things that people are doing, but they don't
like view it as self-care. And so like I know because self-care is somewhat of a buzzword nowadays with like social media hyping it up and you know just encouraging people to take care of themselves, which is like it's not a bad thing. I'm not saying it like it's a bad thing, but I think sometimes we feel like self-care has to be this like big production, and it's can be as simple as like an everything shower. And there might be people who are giving themselves that extra time, once a week or once a month like you, and not realizing like, oh wow, I am actually, providing myself with some additional care or with, just a baseline of care, and that is to be recognized, celebrated, or just acknowledged, whatever that case might be. And so I'm glad that you mentioned these things, and then some other things are just great ideas for people, right? So if you're not taking everything shower, that's an awesome idea. Or rose water or hair oil, like it can be simple, it can take 3 minutes, but it can make a big impact. Like getting ready too, it doesn't have to be a long process to get ready. It could be as simple as not being in your pajamas all day, which I have been guilty of from time to time. Or it could be like just put foundation on. It doesn't even have to be a whole, face of makeup. It could be tinted moisturizer, like something simple that just gives you a little bit of pep in your step, feel, a little bit more done up or put together, whatever the word is that you prefer. But simple things can be self-care. And so I'm glad you shared this list. And I'm glad that you have these things that you're doing that do feel like they are filling your cup, you know, giving back to yourself, I guess. And so I'm curious to know if you have felt like you've had to sacrifice anything at all from choosing to homeschool. I mean, I know that homeschooling can be both a privilege and a sacrifice. And I know that I have received some interesting comments from strangers on the internet of like what a privilege it is for you to be able to homeschool, like as if I didn't have to give up anything to be able to do this, or as if I'm not still like working to be able to do this. So I'd love to know if you've felt like you've had to sacrifice anything and how you got through that and what that looked like, to share how that goes.
Yes, exactly. Self-care can look like so many different things, and as a busy mom, I try to keep it simple. That way, it's easy to fit into my day without taking too much time, but it still helps me feel grounded and good. And yeah, I completely agree. I honestly can't stand when people say that homeschooling is a privilege. Like, I understand why some people think that, but for a lot of people like myself, for my husband and I, it's been a huge sacrifice. When we first started homeschooling, I left my full-time job and took a part-time position so I could homeschool full-time, attend college online part-time, and still contribute financially. Eventually, I left that part-time job too, and we moved in with my parents so I could fully focus on homeschooling and school. At the same time, my husband was working hard to pay off our debt and save for a home. We weren't well off, and on top of that, we were paying weekly copays for multiple therapy sessions. We had to budget carefully for homeschool curriculum and materials year after year. Thankfully, now we receive ESA since we live in Arizona, and it's truly been such an absolute blessing for our family. I just wish that more people understood that. Many families make real sacrifices financially, career-wise, and with their time to be able to homeschool. It's not easy, and it's definitely not always a privilege. For many of us, it's a choice rooted in love, commitment, and a whole lot of faith.
Yes, I completely agree. And, it it is both and, right? Like for many people it's a sacrifice and it's a privilege and an honor, right, to be able to homeschool. So yeah, I definitely agree. So switching gears a little bit, when it comes to homeschooling, what's one, or if you have more than one, we'll obviously take it, but at least one like resource or tool that you're absolutely loving right now, or we're using at the end of the year that helps and supports your homeschool. It can really be anything that you'd like to share.
Yeah, totally. And one resource right now that we're really, really loving is called Outschool. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's super cool. They have so many awesome classes and social little hangouts for the kids. It's super cool. We love it. What about you? What are you guys loving?
Yeah, so I have heard of Outschool. That is really cool that you're using that. I'd love to hear more like about what on Outschool you've done. Yeah, so if you can give us more details, that'd be awesome. Are there specific classes or instructors or subjects that you've done that you and your kids really like? That would be awesome. As far as us, so honestly, right now, because it's summer and we're planning a lot, my biggest resource I'm really excited about and just using a lot is a group that I created. It's free. It's just a bunch of moms in the Telegram app, and we're just you know, sharing this like tools, resources, how things are going, kind of celebrating each other, holding each other accountable for planning and preparing for the school year. So that has been good. And then I'll share a second one. We used the Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons book this school year. And I decided to actually go back and start from the beginning and just do a review over the summer to the point that we're at. And just the second time around is really helping a lot. So with confidence and just the review and being able to see things a second time and practice them a second time. So that has also been a really good tool, resource thing that we're doing this summer. So especially I've heard mixed reviews for that book. Some people love it. Some people are like, this is the worst thing ever. And so I'm finding that going through it a second time is really, really helpful.
That's so awesome. I'm glad that's working out for you. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I love Outschool so much. My son is taking a Minecraft social group and a Fortnite social group on there so he can play with other kids and socialize. He's also taking Spanish. My daughter is taking a girls' hangout class so she can socialize with other girls. She found her two besties on there, and she's also taking a Procreate and a watercolor class. And they're both taking a language arts and a science class on Outschool this year. Honestly, they just have so many cool classes on there, whether it's a core class or an elective class. They have so much to offer. It's so cool, like drawing and honestly, like you name it. I can't recommend them enough.
Okay, yeah. So that definitely does sound like a lot of great classes. I really do need to check them out. And especially I'm thinking about like when I know in advance that it's gonna be a busy time and it could be helpful for me to have some like support for, however many minutes a week or whatever. I'm sure the classes are all different in terms of how often they meet and how long they meet for. So yeah, I'm thinking like, oh, this is a good resource if like I know, you know, holidays are coming up or something like that, and I want to have some free space to do different things or whatever, and I could use something for my son to be able to do while I'm doing that. I definitely need to check out Outschool. I think there was like a Spanish teacher who I saw on TikTok who's on Outschool that I was looking at a while back, but we never ended up taking the class. So it was summer, and I was like, I don't know if we're really going to be able to commit to this. So, anyways, yeah, I definitely want to check that out. I'd love to know about a time that you felt like you failed and tell us about that. Tell me about like what happened, how you got through it, and what you learned from it, like how that has changed your homeschooling or impacted your homeschooling. And of course, failure is, not really a thing because you always learn from what happens. So tell me what you learned, what you changed, all of that, as well as kind of what happened.
It's amazing. I cannot recommend them enough, honestly. Love them so much. Highly recommend. Literally have so many classes. As far as failures go, I mean, I think that there's kind of a lot that, we kind of fail on a little bit as like homeschool moms. Not so like necessarily like fail, but like, mistakes happen, but it's important that we learn from them, right? If we choose to. So for example, like there's just been so many things, but like for example, when my kids were younger, like I definitely tried to replicate like the whole school at home at first, and that definitely didn't like work for us. It was just too much. So then I adjusted, and then that was better, but then it's just kind of ever changing as your kids grow, you kind of had to accommodate and pivot to their needs. At least for mine, that's how it is. So, for example, like this year, I feel like it's a lot better. We're definitely getting into the hang of it more. But even then, it's like just knowing when to pivot and knowing when you're in a good flow. But even then, like even if you're in a good flow, like sometimes there's going to be days when, they're just not getting it in this way. So then that's the beauty of homeschooling, is that you can just, okay, let's pivot and do it this way. Like not this way. Okay, let's figure it out. Let's watch a video. Let's watch a movie. Let's do this project. Let's do it this way, or, until they get it. But also knowing that, like, okay, they need a break right now. Let's pick up on this tomorrow, etc. Right? But yeah, I think just the biggest thing that you can do with failure is just learning from it and just bettering from there.
I have heard that to be a common challenge among homeschoolers, and it just makes sense because we think of school the way we experience school, right? So we kind of just go forth with creating that in our own home, and then if it doesn't work out or turn out the way we would hope, you have to adjust and be flexible and find what does work. So that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing. So I appreciate you sharing and chatting and us getting to get to know each other, and you sharing a bunch about your homeschool. Before we wrap up, is there anything that we didn't get to talk about that you wanted to talk about or share with me? And then also, is there any last minute pieces of advice that you have for someone who is homeschooling or thinking about homeschooling, just overall about the topic of homeschooling, to a fellow homeschooler? What piece of advice would you give them?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having me on here. Honestly, it's been so nice. And yeah, just the last thing that I would give advice to someone who is homeschooling or wanting to homeschool, I would say that homeschooling doesn't have to be or look perfect to be meaningful. And you know your kids best, so really trust yourself and the process as well, and make sure that it fits your family instead of trying to replicate something else or what you think you need to do. Just make sure it fits for your family. And if you're just starting out, don't feel like you have to have it all figured out. Start small, be flexible, and let yourself grow alongside your kids. And just take it one day at a time and give yourself a lot of grace. And remember, you're doing better than you think.
Yes, thank you so much for those last pieces of advice. So good, so helpful. I know that someone who's just starting and wanting to homeschool is definitely going to appreciate that. So thank you for that. Thank you for everything you've shared and for this conversation. It's been so good. I'm really glad we got to chat and get to know each other, and I'm excited to stay in touch. But I appreciate you being on the podcast. Bye.